What's up everyone, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to go over some fundamentals. We're going to talk about how to make a bottom for a wooden box or a cabinet drawer. If we're going to make a box bottom, well, we need a box. So I went ahead and made a box. I milled some walnut up and I cut miter joints here so I have the outside frame of a box. Now if you don't know how to make miter joints, I do have a video on that. Click up there, you can watch that video, make all your miter joints, then come back here and watch the process for making the box bottom. But for those of you who already know how to do that, now we move on to this next step. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look at the box sides and I'm gonna determine what should be the top and what should be the bottom. And I do it visually. I just look at the grain, see what it looks like, and I decide, you know what, I think this will be my top, this will be my bottom. Next step is we need to actually make the bottom for this. And all we really need to do at this point is mill up some lumber. We need a board that's at least this wide and at least this long. I always like to have my box bottoms between 1/4 inch and 3/8 of an inch thick. And the reason for that is really just subjective to what I like. I find that whenever my box bottoms are thinner than 1/4 of an inch, there's kind of like a hollow tapping. Whenever you tap the bottom, it kind of sounds a little bit thin compared to a nice deep thud, which just gives kind of an air of quality. And when you start going over 3/8 of an inch, it really is just added material for no particular reason. Now you can always go thinner, you can always go thicker. There's nothing wrong with either one, just depends on the size of your project. But for most medium-sized boxes, smaller boxes like this, I find those dimensions are kind of the sweet spot for me. I got the box bottom milled up, so now it's time to sand it. I always want to sand my box bottoms to their final thickness before I move on to the next step, because the next step is to cut a groove in the sides for this to fit into. And if I cut that groove now and I fit this bottom in there, it's going to fit great. And then I'm going to sand this, and then my bottom might be a little bit loose. I don't want that. So go ahead and sand it now. I like to sand it from 120 grit to 180 grit, but you could also go up to 220. Really depends on what you're doing and the type of finish you're going to apply. The box bottom sanded up, so now it's time to actually cut the groove in the box for the bottom to fit into. The first thing I like to do is I just take some chalk and I mark the bottom area so I know the inside face, the bottom that I'm going to be cutting that groove on, because what I don't want to do is accidentally cut the wrong side. We're going to cut the grooves here at the table saw using a regular saw blade. Now you could do this the opposite way. You could put in a dado stack or use a regular saw blade, cut wider grooves, then turn around and make a box bottom that will fit into that groove. From my experience, it just hasn't worked out really well for me. I end up having a bottom that is just a little bit too loose or a little too thick, and it's hard to really dial that in. I find it easier to go ahead and make the bottom, then make the groove to match the bottom. The next step for me is I want to lower the blade down so that I can set the depth of our groove. I like to shoot for my blade being about, I don't know, half the thickness of the workpiece. There's not really a right or wrong with this. You can go lower, you can go deeper if you want to. The only thing is I make sure that the groove is deep enough so that if my box bottom expands and contracts, then it doesn't contract to the point where it falls out of the groove and the box bottom falls out of place. Next, I'm going to set the fence in relation to the blade. And to do that, I'll use the actual box pieces, the box sides themselves. I like to make sure that I have about 1/8 of an inch of material for the box bottom before we get to the groove for the actual box bottom. Meaning that when you're looking at the bottom of the box, you should see about 1/8 inch material. Then you'll see the groove that we cut for the box bottom to fit into. Then you have the rest of the box. I know that my table saw blade's 1/8 of an inch thick. So what I'll do is I will go ahead and cut one pass on each of the 4 sides of my box. Cut all 4 of them, and then I know I have a 1/8 inch wide groove for the box bottom. Then I can start moving my table fence over closer to the blade and continue to make passes. I'm going to do that until the width of my groove is about the thickness of my material. When I start getting close, I will test fit the box bottom into the groove to see if it fits. And if it doesn't fit, I nudge the fence over and make another pass. And I keep doing that until I get the perfect fit. And then I make sure that I cut all 4 of my pieces. I know all those grooves are going to be exactly the same. Now that all of our grooves are cut, we can assemble the box just using some tape. We have to cut the box bottom so it fits in the groove. So to do that, I'm gonna flip it over so that the groove is at the top and a combination square. I can stick the combination square into the groove and then lock it down, move it to the top of my box and make a mark. And that is gonna be the same depth at all of the pieces. So I will make the mark on all the 4 sides. What I like about this process is no measuring. I don't care how wide the box bottom is. What I care is that it fits. So what I'll do is I can place it on my bottom here, and I make sure that I'm about 1/16 of an inch inside my line. And then I can simply make a mark over on this side, and I know I need to cut this part off. After I trim the one side, I will then do the same thing lengthwise, and I will set it 1/16 of an inch away from my line, and then 1/16 of an inch in from this line, make a mark, and I know I cut that off. Now that we cut our box bottom, it's inside all of our lines that we marked, we can assemble it. I make sure that all of the joints here are still tight so that I know that the box bottom's not too wide. Flip it over, look at the bottom also, and then I can see if the box bottom is going to slide in it, and it doesn't. Now that I know that the whole box fits together, I can glue the whole thing together. I won't glue the box bottom though. I will keep that floating, that way it can expand and contract over the seasons. I will just glue the joints, but there you go. You've got a box. There you have it. We have a beautiful walnut box, and then you can make your decisions. Do you want to pre-finish the bottom before you glue it up? Do you want to glue it up and then finish it? Do you want to sand the inside faces before you finish it or afterwards? Those are all subjective things, completely up to you, but I'm hoping that this video helped you out so you feel a little bit more confident in making boxes. I love making them. They're really fun to do. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider subscribing to the channel. I put out videos all the time on all sorts of topics. And until we meet again, get in your shop and build something awesome.